Good afternoon, everyone. It's Thursday, November 12th at 1:30 p.m. and it's my pleasure to call the regular board meeting of the Alberni Clay Park Regional District to order. I'd like to recognize that we're conducting our business in the territories of the Hoopa-Chesset and Sushot First Nations here in the office, and I imagine that many of you are coming from many other territories, and so it's important to take a moment to appreciate and recognize that fact. The Local Government Act requires that the first meeting of November, the board shall elect a new chair and vice chair. And for that task, we will pass the duties over to our General Manager of Administrative Services, who is also our Corporate Officer, Wendy Thompson. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Doug. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of the election of chair and vice chair this year. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and our board meetings being live streamed via Zoom webinar, the procedures for voting for chair and vice chair are going to change slightly. This revised procedure is consistent with the regional district's procedures bylaw. We will call for elections of chair and vice chair 3 times. If there's more than one candidate, we'll give each candidate 3 minutes to address the board as to why they should be elected. The corporate officer will email directors the ballot for voting. The directors will email back their vote to the corporate officer. And just to remind directors, please just click reply, not reply all, when you send your ballot back so that it's confidential. Then the CIO and corporate officer will count the votes and declare the chair and or vice chair. And just to note that our voting, this is a bit different. It will be held with the strictest confidence between the CAO and myself. So if there's any questions, if not, we'll get started. Great. So I will call for nominations for chair of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District for 2020-2021 a first time. Director Haggard?
I'd like to nominate John Jack for chair, please.
Director Jack, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Thank you. And I'll call for nominations for chairperson of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors for 2020-2021 a second time. Director Cote?
Thank you. I would like to nominate Director John McNabb for chair. Thank you.
Director Matt McNabb, do you accept that nomination?
Yes, I do. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. And I will call for nominations for chairperson of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District for 2020-2021 a third time. Okay. There being no further nominations. Director Jack, did you want to speak to the board?
Okay. So it's been an honor and a privilege to represent the board and be the chair for the past year. And what I'd like to do is just focus on the plans ahead. So I think number one, the priority continues to be the COVID-19 situation, and that I think given the developments that are occurring in the province and Vancouver Island specifically, we'll be having a long conversation about that fairly quickly. I would just like to continue on the development and the adoption of the strategic plan process that we've just gone through. And I think we're in a good place to really move forward as a region together. I think in terms of specific issues that are close, that I think we need to see through, one of which being the landfill, of course, and the relationship we have with Sushot and Hoopa-Chesset, as well as just general Indigenous reconciliation, continuing on with the work we're doing with UBCM and AVICC on looking and talking to the province in regards to expanding Indigenous representation and interface with local government. After that, I am really looking forward to overseeing continued asset management work being done and plans being adopted, not just for the region as a whole, but for each of the different parts. And lastly, I think we're in a good position for very good provincial relationships. And I think that's something we should really try to capitalize on in the near future. I hope to be your chair going into the future, and I will represent the entire region to the best of my ability. And I think that's about it. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Director McNabb?
Hi there. Well, I stand once again for chair. I think that it's important that the Alberni Valley particularly gets a presence represented by the chair. And some of the issues that I see that have to be handled in a different way are certainly the pandemic and the damage to the economy that it is causing, the damage to personal lives that is causing in all of our regional district. This is something that I think needs immediate focus. Those people that have been displaced, both from their jobs and their homes in our regional district, need to be looked after, need to be held within our regional district. When we actually open up back into the real world again, we're going to need these folks as employees in the upcoming economy. Local businesses in all of our region are suffering immensely in this second round. And I really think that the regional district needs to step forward and find the political support to carry these businesses through to the end of this pandemic. I think with the 45 years that I've been in business, I think that I have a good understanding of how business operates and how we can help. As well as that, the issues around drug addiction and homelessness, and as well as mental health is just something that we have to address. And the thing that is being most understated is the actual treatment of these folks to get them back into a positive situation in society. So I think that I've proven that I can represent the board, and I would like this chance to be the chair for the upcoming year of 2021. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So I will now email the ballots to the directors, and Doug and I are just going to sign off and conduct the election.
The boardroom appears to be muted, but not muted.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Come on.
We need some music in the interludes.
Penny, I think you should hum a tune.
La, la, la. You really don't want to hear me sing. I was actually asked not to when I was a young child in school. They said, just mouth the words, please.
I too was asked at the Christmas concert to only move my mouth and not let sound come out.
This isn't fair. It was interesting at the VICC Resiliency Climate Action Summit. There was music interludes, and they actually even had a dance party for 15 minutes. So people actually got up and danced during the summit. It was good. People really did dance, and it felt good to move your body after a full day.
Yeah, I went to an AFN event that had everyone have to get up and do a circle dance. It was in Calgary or something like that. And yeah, that definitely woke everyone up. It was good. Yeah.
I know Doug plays guitar, and I'm not sure if he sings too, but he's not in the room anymore. Maybe he could entertain us.
His singing gets better with the more scotch that he drinks.
Oh, is that the trick? Tunes up the vocal cords.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would like to declare Director Jack the chairperson of the Alberni Clackatt Regional District for 2020-2021 and the vice chair of the Regional Hospital District. Congratulations. So we're now going to conduct elections for vice chair of the board and chair of the hospital district. I'll call for nominations the first time for vice chairperson of the Alberni Clackatt Regional District for 2020-2021.
I'd like to nominate John McNabb.
Director McNabb, do you accept that nomination?
Thank you. I do. Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to call for nominations a second time for vice chairperson of the Alberni Clackatt Regional District for 2020-2021. Director Shannon?
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Director Cote.
Director Cote, do you accept this nomination?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And call for nominations a third time for vice chairperson of the regional district for 2020-2021. Okay, there being no further nominations, I'll give each candidate 3 minutes to speak to the board as to why they should be elected to the vice chair position. And we'll start with Director McNabb.
Well, I certainly have been involved in the healthcare system for over the last 7 or 8 years that we've been together. I've been on the board of the Fir Park Echo and become to understand the way the system works better. One of the things that I definitely would be working towards aggressively is to get the West Coast General Hospital in better contact with the board. I think that I don't understand why they're not communicating with us, but items like our emergency ward, which we've funded years ago, still isn't completed. And I think that being the hub hospital of our regional district, I really do think that we need to pull them closer in and be able to communicate them on a monthly, bi-monthly basis. So I certainly am very interested in looking at solutions to the addiction problem that we have in all of the regional district, and also the homelessness issues that exist and seem to just be growing at a rampant rate. So I'd ask for your support. I know that I can do this job successfully and act as vice chair in the absence of the chair. So I'd like to do that for the next year, please, if you'd let me. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Cote?
Thank you. Thank you for the nomination. Would like to step in as the vice chair for a few reasons. Recently, I attended the Vancouver Island Coastal Community Resiliency Climate Action Summit and listened to the initiatives that they were bringing up. It was a full day of very informative action plans coming from all of Vancouver Island communities. So they were asking that the health networks and AVICC possibly take the lead on these initiatives, which places me right sort of in the middle because I'm the health network chair for Bernie Claquot, and I'm also first vice president of the AVICC. So I'd like to place myself in a unique position where I can help our regional district within these initiatives. I've also been a representative on the West Coast Native Healthcare for the past 14 years, representing the regional district, and they've increased their housing. They're continuing on. They're building another 40 units to address housing needs. I really want to continue to link our regional district with improving our health indicators through all of the initiatives that have been identified within our health network. I've worked with Island Health representatives in the past, being vice chair, and looked at the strategic priorities. And back 6 years ago, I was the one that was asking them, where is First Nations health? Why isn't there a seat at the table here? Josie has brought that forward too in the past years as vice chair. So I'd just like to say that we're not in normal times, and it doesn't look like we're going to be changing anytime too soon. I'd like to see the ACRD supported through the vice chair, to support the chair, to support the initiatives, housing, the addictions, health, mental health, transportation. There's so much that needs to be done and addressed. And I think that I would ask for your support so that I could help to move these initiatives on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to email the ballot to directors, and the CAO and I will leave the room to conduct the election.
Music interlude again, please.
Penny, I was going to do a couple of my Navy songs, but I forgot that we're live and probably wouldn't be in the best interest of my political career.
Yeah, probably not appropriate.
It's very poignant music.
I was going to say, Director Jack, now that you're chair, during our break between meetings, maybe you could lead us in a dance party.
I have been shanghaied into dancing, and it's just not a. I'm not very good. Maybe if I put my shoes on the wrong feet, it'll be better. I just wish I had old Joe Stanhope's moves. He's probably the best male dancer I've seen in a long time.
Because he was dancing with Mary.
Yeah, and Selena. Selena's a good dancer too. Joe's the only one I know who can keep up with her. Hugh or Jean, will Maggie be connecting as well, or is it just the two of you?
Just the two of us.
Oh, yeah, okay. Hey, Wilfred, is your nation doing fish this year?
Yeah, we've gathered more food fish for our nation due to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We've sent out we've garnered an extraordinary amount for the people, so it's good. We allocated a certain amount of budget, and we've gone over that quite substantially. So the people will be fed. So. Yeah. Yourself?
Yeah, we did the same. We have we just did the public distributions though, so not everyone got some just because of the timing. So I think we're going to try to figure out what to do afterwards. We caught a few people advertising on Facebook though, so we gotta get our communications out that it's actually you get more value from eating it than you do from selling it, because just the health of salmon alone is so much better. It's I just because you're a pretty dispersed nation as well, so it's hard to get everything out there, you know, like it's a bit easier when 80% of your people live on our territory, but
yeah, for sure.
Here we go.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to declare Director McNabb Vice Chair of the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District for 2020-2021. Congratulations. And I'll now turn over the chair to our chair, John Jack.
Make sure I unmute myself. Okay, so congratulations, Director McNabb, and thank you, Director Cote, for running. Yeah, so let's just get right to the approval of the agenda. And I'm wondering, I think there is one item that needs to be added, or is that something else, Wendy? Is it a piece of material? I just seem to remember an item.
Yes, there is a late item for consideration under 10B, I believe. Just a moment, and I'll grab that.
It was sent out by email. I just don't have it. in
Yes,
front.
so it was sent out by email to the directors and it is on our website as well. It's a late request for decision from Amy and Natka. And it's regarding an amendment to the UBCM Housing Needs Report application for Treaty First Nations.
Oh, okay.
So we can consider that under section 10. Sorry, just bear with me a second here.
10(1)B?
Correct, yes. thank
Okay.
you.
Are there any other items to be added to the agenda, or shall we go forward with a motion? I think we're prepared for a motion. I'm hearing nothing. So thanks, Director McNabb. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cole. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to declarations. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest or gifts exceeding $250 in value? Seeing none, we will move on to the adoption of minutes. 5A is the Board of Directors meeting dated October 28th, 2020. Thank
Move
you,
adoption.
Thank you, Director Cote. Thank you, Director Shannon. Anyone have any comments or additions, deletions, etc.? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item B, which is the Alberni Valley and Banfield Services Committee, dated September 2nd.
Move adoption.
2020. Thank you, Director McNabb. Do you have a seconder? Sorry, I missed it. Director Cote, thank you. Okay, any further comments? All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, next up is the Alberni Valley and Banfield Services Committee meeting dated November 4th, 2020. That's the one I was thinking of. Thank you, Director Cote. Thank you, Director Shannon. Any comments? See none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And then finally, item D, Electoral Area Directors Committee meeting dated November 4th, 2020. Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Shannon. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. All right, now this finally brings us to petitions and delegations. So I'd like to thank Mr. Grist and Ms. McIntosh for their for their patience. So normally we give 10 minutes for a presentation, and then I might hit pause to see if you're not close to the end, to see if we want to continue with it. We usually do, so don't worry. And it doesn't include questions and answers, and it just turned to 2 o'clock. So I'll just leave it to you now. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, directors, for giving us the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. Hugh Grist and I are here representing the Alberni Valley Community Foundation, and Hugh Grist is the chairperson of our foundation. Do we have a PowerPoint? Is it showing on your screens?
I believe Janice is going to share the screen. There we go.
Great. Thank you. And the next slide, please. So just by way of an introduction, I'll remind you that the Alberni Valley Community Foundation is an organization that provides opportunities for citizens to make lasting contributions to the community and provides funding to a range of services in the community in the areas of the arts, culture and heritage, education, health and physical activity, social services, and the environment. Since 1999, the Alberni Valley Community Foundation has supported our community with $330,000 in grants. In addition, during the COVID pandemic, the foundation has been responsible for reviewing applications and distributing $148,500 toward pandemic relief in the Alberni Valley. Next slide, please. Today, we are pleased to launch the 2020 report, Vital Signs. Vital Signs is a community check-in conducted by community foundations across Canada. It measures the vitality of our communities, identifies significant trends, and supports action on issues that are critical to our quality of life. This year is such an anomaly that most communities opted to not produce a vital signs report this year. Our foundation, however, thought it was important to document the community's response to the pandemic and to be able to measure the impact in 2 years' time. We have, though, produced a smaller report measuring the key issue areas of education, housing, food security, and the environment. I encourage you to read this report, but I'd like to take this opportunity to point out a few highlights. Next slide, please. In education, there's good news. The 6-year high school completion rate has hit an all-time high of 83%. This compares to a provincial rate of 89%. And the Indigenous high school completion rate has increased from 56% to 70%. COVID impacted education through the initial closure of schools, but also through limited and changed access to informal education provided by recreation programs and library services. The Community Foundation helped fund the Vancouver Island Regional Library's digital care program, which provided residential care facilities with internet connections, computers, and instruction, so seniors could connect with family, access entertainment and education, and ease their sense of isolation. Next slide, please. In the area of housing, a number that will jump out is the huge increase in the number of multi-family housing starts. This has been, however, due to a single project with one developer. It's unfortunate that the planned homeless population count did not happen this year, particularly as the average home price, the median home value, and the cost to rent have all increased this year, and the rental vacancy rate continues to decrease. Shelters and programs for the homeless had to adapt quickly to meet community needs during the pandemic. The Community Foundation provided $10,000 of emergency funding to the Canadian Mental Health Association for an additional homeless outreach worker who continued the work of homeless outreach, but also took on additional tasks specific to the needs during a pandemic. Next slide, please. Food security. Providing food to community members facing unemployment or reduced income continues to be one of the most pressing priorities of the pandemic. A number of local agencies came together to form the Alberni COVID Community Response to ensure meal food items are available. The Alberni Valley Community Foundation provided to date $68,000 to various food programs responding to increased needs due to COVID. Next slide, please. In the area of the environment, over the past year, air quality has improved, water consumption has decreased, and household recycling has increased. However, these are areas where long-term comparisons will provide the most useful data, and they're also the areas where individual households have the power to influence change. Next slide. The Vital Signs Report is available to anyone online, www.albernifoundation.ca, and we are distributing hard copies to our governing bodies, funding partners, and social service agencies. Additional hard copies can be obtained from any board member or by emailing info@albernifoundation.ca. I would like to acknowledge the work of our consultant, Maggie Hodge-Kwan, who so capably prepared this report for us. The report has been funded in part by the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, Community Futures, and the Alberni Valley Social Planning Council. Thank you to the Regional District for assisting with funding this report. The board of the Alberni Valley Community Foundation hopes you will find this information useful in planning and decision-making as you continue your work to providing for the health of our communities. Hugh and I would be pleased to address any questions you might have.
Hey, thank you very much for that presentation. I have Director Cote and then Director Steer.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you so much for this. The vital signs are very important to our community to realize what's happening out in the community for so many of the initiatives that you identified. And just like to say that the Health Network will thank you also. We do rely on the numbers and the information that's provided in here. And thank you so much. Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Good words. I have Director Steer, and is there anyone else? Dr. Haggard, Director McNabb.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair. Thank you very much, Jean, for your presentation. And I'll echo Director Cote's comments as on the value of this information that comes forward. You may be aware that up on the West Coast, we also have the Clackwood Biosphere Trust that produces a vital signs document with, once again, very valuable communications around the data sets that they put forward for us. I'm wondering how much collaboration does the Alberni Valley Community Foundation have with the CBT in terms of the collection of data and maybe the leveraging of resources that might be available to produce these documents?
Are you more familiar with that than I am?
You're muted, Hugh.
Yeah, we do share the information with the Clackwood Biosphere Trust. Not all of it applies, of course, but Maggie Hodgkin is in contact with them when she prepares it. We've had a good working relationship with them.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Hey, I have Director Haggard and then Director McNabb and then Director Beckett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to speak on the housing for a moment. One thing that really contributed to the low vacancy rate in our rental market is when the house prices started to rise, a lot of the landlords decided to cash out. So that really contributed to our low rental availability in the marketplace. There is a lot of market rentals that would be coming online effective December the 1st. With the Bird Street apartments coming available. So that will help ease a little bit. And also, Mayor Minions, correct me if I'm wrong with the numbers, I think there's 140, how many?
142 in that unit, or in that building.
140 units of affordable housing coming online as well. Hopefully they'll be starting in the next year if they haven't already started. So again, that will help with the homeless and the rental rate in the community. So lots happening to help these numbers. It just takes time, unfortunately. So thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to Director McNabb and then Director Beckett and then Director Cote.
So I'd just like to thank you folks for the work that you put in and quietly behind the scenes and the help that you give to the community. I know that it's an absolute mountain of work effort that you put into this, and thank you very much.
Okay, Director Beckett and then Director Cote.
Yes, wearing my school board trustee hat in SD 62, I couldn't help but notice the upward trends for graduation in SD 70, and I feel very strongly that public education for our children and graduation is so important in strengthening our communities. So thank you for that report. Thank you for the information. Congratulations, SD 70.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Just like to mention that the Vancouver Island Coastal Community Resiliency Climate Action Summit, there was reference to vital signs that are collected all over the islands. And we're looking at hoping that vital signs would have a wellness measurement that could be shared throughout all of vital signs so that there was a comparison that we could use all over our different communities. So I'm sure you'll hear more about it. And a lot of them are very similar. And great work. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, with that, I think we have universal praise for the work that you do. And I have noticed that this has had an impact on the types of decisions and considerations that we make while making decisions at the board. Oh. I'm wondering, Jean, if you wanted to, and thank you, Janice, if you wanted to maybe close off and then we'll be all finished.
I appreciate your comments very much, and I've made some notes on the areas that you've highlighted. And of course, the intention is to redo vital signs again in 2 years. So there's where some of those comparisons will really come to light. So I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you today and look forward to working together into the future. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and we'll welcome you back whenever you want to. All right, have a good day. Thank you, Hugh. Okay. All right, so that brings us to item 7, which is correspondence for action. And the item here is a request for appointment and an alternate appointment to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. I don't think that we need a presentation on this. Shall we do? Yeah, thank you, Director McNabb. Oh, you're muted though.
I would nominate Director Cote.
Oh, and we should list this secondary. I think I was this year, and I can continue to be if that's the case.
And the secondary for Director Jack.
If it's all right. And Director Cote, you're good to continue representing?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Everyone. Okay. Director Cole. Okay, any further comments? Dr. McNabb, did you have a comment or no?
Well, you know, as much as I hate to add fuel to the budget fire on the library, I'm just thinking of the the service that we're getting in the Alberni Valley. You know, we've got one library. It's in the city of Port Alberni, and when you look at some of these other communities, they've got libraries all over the place. So I'm thinking about the logistics of actually putting one on the Beaufort, Cherry Creek, Beaver Creek border somewhere, and just thinking about that. I mean, I don't know, I haven't talked to the other directors with regards to that, but you know, we're paying the money, and it's lots of money. And when you get places like Sayward that have got a new library, you know, it just, you know, I don't know what the demand for that would be, but it was worthwhile looking at anyhow.
Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director McNabb, all the information is available through Viral on the usage of the libraries. They're going up, up, up. They continue to go up. With COVID, we heard the outcry from the communities to open up the libraries again. There's been a lot of what you call it, love for everybody's libraries. Either you love it or you don't have a use for it. It seems that there's a lot more people that love it than don't have a use for it. Students are relying on it, going it with COVID to get the information. Seniors use it for social and to use internet. And we do have in the Valley just the one library, but we have $1 million in the budget to do renovations to the Port Alberni Library. If you want a library in your area suggested, then it needs to be a formal application and a call from the director at least and the community would be great too, to actually see if it's warranted to have a library there. The city of Port Alberni was looking at a second library, and we may be looking at that. There was some complications moving forward on the proposed renovation on the existing library, so I'm not sure where we're at the moment, but I think things are still going ahead with that. And we, for the rural areas, Banfield has books by mail, as does every area.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have Directors Bodner and then Director Minions.
Thank you to the chair. I remember where there was a time when they used to have a mobile library that went through the valley. And now that COVID is here, I'm wondering if something like that could be brought up again.
Thank you for that. I think that's something that we can continue to talk about later. Director Minions?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo the frustration from Director McNabb, especially from the city's perspective. We pay between $700,000 and $800,000 a year toward the library, and then, of course, the Alberni Valley area Alberni Valley areas of the regional district pay an additional roughly $400,000. So it is a significant cost that we are paying toward to have one library. And it's just because of the Library Act and how the funding formula breaks down. There's no way that we can avoid that if we want to be in the system. That is what it costs. I find that frustrating because I think that our communities could do more with that money, but they offer a fantastic service. That said, I think there is a very reasonable discussion to be had about, do we have the population base in this valley for a second library? And if so, where that library should be. I had, on behalf of the city, having conversations with Rosemary, the executive director of Vural, to talk about what the process would look like to have a second library in the city of Port Alberni. And in that case, we would be considering contributing land or a building site, basically. That's typically what the library board looks for to support a project, is some kind of contribution from the local government. So we've paused those conversations during COVID because Vural's financial situation changed a lot, but I would be happy to have those conversations on a regional basis instead of just the city having that conversation, to see if there's, a more suitable location in the regional district. And if so, we could push together. So I'm happy to have that conversation either as a part of a meeting or just informally with other directors, as the city is kind of having that conversation anyways. Thank you.
Thank you. I think last word will be Director McNabb, and then we'll finish off. I think we may want to have an actual agenda item at our next meeting about just library strategy in general. That might be the best. I did see your hand, Director Steer. So no, you're okay. Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So I think we should bring this forward at a Alberni Valley Banfield meeting and have a discussion just to see what all the directors think about it, the area directors. And, we've always got McLean's Mill that we can add a little action to the parking lot to, or something with maybe rent some land from the city for a rural one. So anyhow, a good discussion for another day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask if there are any more comments to the motion itself. Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. All right, thank you. All right, Director Cote, I'll probably want to have a conversation with you pretty soon about how we move ahead. So with that brings us to item 7B, which is a discussion on the Clycourt Biosphere Trust. And I'm wondering who could present that from staff. There we go. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, it's essentially asking if the board wants to continue support the continued designation of the Clayoquot Sound UNESCO Biosphere Region designation. And so if there's been objections to this, that'd be logical to not provide such a resolution. But in the absence of those objections, I think it's appropriate for the board to pass the possible motion that's put here in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Haggard.
I'd like to move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors forward a letter to the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust supporting the ongoing Clayoquot Sound UNESCO Biosphere Region designation.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Cole. Any further comments? I think my only comment would be what the surrounding First Nations might think, but they'll get their own chance at that, I think. So I think this is great. With that in mind, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, that brings us to item 8, which is correspondence for information. Is there anything anyone would like to pull out? Dr. Cote, I think. Oh, you're muted, sorry.
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, if there's nothing, we could have a motion to receive.
Motion to receive.
Thank you, Director Coots. Do we have a seconder? Director Shannon. Sorry, I wasn't looking up, so I didn't see. All those in favor? Motion carried. All right, that brings us to item 9, which is request for decision regarding signing authority for banking purposes. I think we do this after every board election. Terry, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Yeah, so it's just for our banking and our MFA documents. So we need an official resolution. So the directors for signing authority would be Director John Jack, chairperson, Director John McNabb as vice chair. And for the past couple of years, we've had a third director. Director Cote has been doing that for us as a third person as a signing authority, which has worked well. Sometimes when people are unavailable, it's just nice to have that third option. And then from a staff perspective, we're sticking with the 3 that we've had for the last many years, which is the CAO, myself, the CFO, and the general manager of admin services.
Great, thank you. Director McNabb.
So I would move that the signatures be the chair, the vice chair, and Director Cote.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckett. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just kind of wondering if, I guess we'd have to include the staff signing authorities in that as well.
Oh, yeah.
As displayed.
Yeah. Okay, and then seconded by Director Beckett. All those in favor? Motion carried. All right, thank you. That brings us to item B, which is the BC Infrastructure Planning Grant for the Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department. Terry?
That is myself as well. So after the asset management plan, it was really discovered for Sprout Lake that because of its long and narrow nature of the service area, it's becoming very hard to sustain financially for the community. So we want to look at a 2-hall deployment option instead of a 3-hall. So hiring this funding from the province will help us hire a consultant to do that study. And that's all, unless anyone has.
Director Cote, go ahead.
I'd just like to make the motion to recommend that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors authorize the chairperson and chief administrative officer to enter into an infrastructure planning grant agreement for $7,500 with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for the Asset Management Plan Implementation Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department Project.
Second, Roberts.
Thank you, Director Roberts. Any further comments? Director Beckett?
Thank you. Very valuable assessment and very appropriate. I'm just concerned in reading the report. It talks about asset management and I'm looking for some clarification with respect to are we simply talking about the structures and the apparatus and the the fund savings or the economic savings versus response times in accordance with the playbook, NFPA, and other standards. So I support it, don't get me wrong, and there's value in it. I just want to make sure that we're using the right approach in evaluating response times and level of service. Thank you.
So the grant application opportunity was an asset management opportunity, but the report is an asset deployment. So it will look at all those things: response time, area of coverage, all those type of things. So that will be that will be all those things that you listed, that you are much more educated about fire than I am. And then we'll be using that information in the deployment plan to help us adjust the asset management plan. So it will eventually lead into the asset management plan, but it really is about the service itself and a consultant's view of how to best do the service, including things such as number of volunteers, which they're struggling to maintain at 3 halls, and the playbook aspects and all those items.
Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. So there's been 2 studies done already for the Sprout Lake Community Fire Department. And in both of them, it was identified that there's possibility of comparing the halls down. We've done mapping where identifying coverage zones where there's overlap. So taking that into consideration, they did downgrade hall number 2 to a garage already. So we just want to make sure that we could actually pare down to 2 halls. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, are there any further comments on the motion? Seeing none. So it was moved by Director Cote, seconded by Director Roberts. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you for that. All right, that brings us to item C, which is the 2021 Community Works Fund project. Go ahead.
This is myself as well, Mr. Chair. So this was presented to the electoral area directors for the Community Works Fund projects for 2021. There's a number of projects that were on in the financial plan for 2020 that have not been completed yet, and they have expressed their desire to try to complete those during 2021, plus another, I believe, 10 projects that they presented in varying stages of development. So some are just concepts that we need to work with staff and the directors to kind of determine what that would look like, including whether they want to commit to the long-term costing of some of these projects. But the motion at that meeting was to try to further all of these projects for the 2021 budget discussions. So staff will be reaching out to some of the individual directors to talk about the projects that are in their area and try to get some more design concepts more clearly defined and some costing for that budget discussions.
Okay, well, everyone. Okay, Director McNabb, please go ahead.
Okay, I would like to move that the Alberni Clayoquot Board of Directors forward any uncompleted community works funding projects from 2020 to 2024 financial plan, as well as develop the 2021 proposed community works funding projects for construction during the 2021 to 25 financial plan discussions, and further that staff look at opportunities to fulfill the construction or implement the projects within the 2021 year, and that the board of directors instruct staff to investigate options to move forward with the Beaver Creek Park project.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second, but I'd like to make a correction.
Okay.
It's for consideration, not construction.
Oh, yes, that's, yeah. I didn't even hear that. Thank you, Director Cote.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. I saw some other hands up. Was that just to move, Director Minions or Director Beckett? No? Okay. Okay, with that in mind, are there any comments Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay. Okay, that brings us to item D, which is the Crown Land 10-year application for the Banfield water system. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is Crown Land 10-year application for a water connection to Burlow Island. There's a new property that has requested a water connection. Because we're working in the water and the foreshore, it requires a 10-year. We have a number of other items that have to fall in place for us to move forward with this, but we're looking to put the application in so it's not one of the items that holds up the process because we do have a window that we can work in for fisheries.
Thank you. And Director Beckett, please go ahead.
I'm certainly supportive of the application, but I would like it recorded that the individual has done, the applicant has done an awful lot of work on the property without taking out the appropriate permits, the development permit, et cetera, et cetera. So I support the application, given the right of the applicant to procure water, and given the window of opportunity, I can respect that. But I wanted identified that there are other matters that are before the ACRD that certainly must be addressed at some point in time.
Thank you for that, Director Beckett. I have Director Cote, and then we'll go back to
Thank
Ms.
you.
Brown. Yeah, go ahead.
The construction of developments moving forward without permit, I'd like to know from staff if this would be an area that we could start the ticketing to make sure that people get the proper permits. And they're part of the reason for that is to make sure that people are aware that they need to have a permit. And we don't end up into people spending money recklessly that has to be developed, like deconstructed. And it is for the benefit of the person doing the development. So that was a question for staff. Thank you.
Well said. Do it right or do it twice, I guess. Ms. Brunn or Mr. Irk?
Yeah. So this particular property, there was some clearing in the foreshore. Or there was not just some. There was clearing in the foreshore. That's in a development permit area. Unfortunately, that is not something that falls within the ticketing. Our ability to do ticketing on because of how the legislation is written and the development permits are in a community plan. There will be a report coming forward with respect to this application. I expect for the next board meeting as well. And so if the board is issuing this, if the board proceeds with applying for this Crown grant, that doesn't mean that all of the other requirements for the permits don't have to be met, and doesn't take away the board's ability to make decisions on other applications.
Thank you for that.
And as more of a general comment about this, that's certainly something that we can discuss at a future meeting. Is just sort of not the concept, but just that we deal with a number of properties where things are done without going through the proper permitting process, and that's certainly, I think, a general discussion we can have.
Okay, so just for timeline purposes, there's still utility in passing this motion today. I'd assume. That's a question, I suppose. Ms. Brunn?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Yes, I would like to move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to apply for a 30-year Crown Land 10-year for a portion of the Banfield Inlet near Burlow Island in order to install water line to provide water service to 422 Burlow Island.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Alrighty. Any further comments? Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just curious, is there no ability to put a well or anything on this island?
No, it's very unlikely. It's difficult when it's usually bedrock on an island near the ocean. And we do have a water line that is relatively close by. It actually makes really good sense to service them from the system.
Go ahead, Director Beckett.
And Jenny, if you could clarify, I believe Mike mentioned this. It is the owner's responsibility to pay for that line going in. Is that correct?
Yeah, the bylaw requires a minimum charge of $1,800 or the cost of. And so the applicant, as far as the water fees are concerned, is paying for all of our consultant costs to develop, do the environmental assessment and management plan and all of those things. And we're also, of course, going to require that that payment is done ahead of time before we proceed, especially in this instance where we don't know if the other permits will be approved.
Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. Are we then responsible for the line or providing, making sure that it's potable water?
We're responsible up to the property line, as we are with all of the water system. Beyond the property line, it is the residents' responsibility.
So while it's out in the water, it's our responsibility?
Up to their property line.
Okay. Well, back in the 60s, my grandfather was a partial owner of some property in Burla. So whenever it comes up, my ears perk up. Okay, with that in mind, though, are there any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. All right, that brings us to item E, which is the Alberni Valley Curbside and Recycling Depot Contract Extensions. Please go ahead, Ms. Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item was brought to the Alberni Valley Banfield Committee, and we are requesting an extension or recommending an extension to the existing recycling contract, which will take us to, well, it's a flexible extension because we're trying to align with the 3-stream organics diversion project. So we'll have the ability to extend to somewhere between March and October for the city portion, and we can extend all the way to October for the remaining portion of residents that won't be included in the collection. So that'll include Beaver Creek and our First Nation communities. And then we're also asking or recommending that we do a 6-month extension for operation of the recycling depot, and that will provide staff with adequate time to issue an RFP for operation of the facility.
And there are 2 motions here, one on the bottom of page 4 and one on the top of page 5, just for everyone's convenience. Okay, any further comments? Director Cote, go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, first motion, Director Cote.
Okay, that the Alberni Board of Directors authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute a contract extension with Waste Management for curbside recycling collection in the Alberni Valley until March 31st, 2021, with the ability to extend up to October 31st, 2021.
So thank you. Seconded by Director McNabb. Did you have a comment as well, or just a second? Just a second? Okay.
Just
Seconder, sorry. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, and the second motion?
I'll make the motion if you want. That the Alberni ACRD Board of Directors authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute a contract extension with Waste Management for operation of the 3rd Avenue Recycle Depot until May 31st, 2021, with the ability to extend up to November 30th, 2021.
Thank you, Director McNabb. Seconded. Did you have a comment as well, Director McNabb?
Nope, just goody.
Oh, yeah, okay. With that in mind, any further comments? Director Cote.
Thank you. I've been to the 3rd Avenue Depot recently a few times, and it's run very well. And there is one comment though, D-cell battery or 9-volt batteries need to be bagged, which is really strange. So each battery has to be put into an individual little bag. So I'm wondering if there is something that we could do to throw it into a solution or something so it doesn't cause harm, and each battery wouldn't have to be bagged separately. Thanks.
I will look into that. Thank you very much. I also should mention that we have done a review of the operation of the facility after 1 month, and we are going to be reducing the amount of delineators and cones and traffic management in the outside area. We're keeping the mask requirement in place and the social distancing, but I think that it will become a little more user-friendly for the majority of people.
Great. Okay, so we have a motion moved by Director Cote, seconded by Director McNabb. Are there any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, so I'm noting a bunch of people are getting up. Do we want to do a 5 to 10 minute break for washroom bio?
That would be fantastic.
Okay, so I'll call a 8-minute break. So if everybody can come back by 2:50, that'd be great. All right, 1 minute
They
warning.
actually gave us the soundtrack from the AVCC forum.
Yeah, spent all that time sitting, planning the forum, and was unable to attend it because of 911. But
Oh yeah. Okay, that's 150 or 250. All right, we'll pick back up with planning matters, which means, well, municipal folks need to be here for quorum. It's oh no, it is for all directors. That's even better. So with that in mind, I think the next item we have up is item 10.1A, which is the Somas Watershed Flood Management Plan. So this is another item coming from the AVB committee, I believe. That was a slog to get through. Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. I'd like to move the motion, but first, I've been asked by community members to actually read an email for the board, so I'll start off. Says, I have serious concerns regarding their option number 4 for the Sprout River outlet. I have the original Simons Engineering actually surveyed data elevations of the river bed from 1956. It's bedrock and hasn't changed since 1956. There's more than sufficient elevation differences from the weir to the outcropping, 230 to 400 meters below, that it would have and doesn't have to have any restrictive effect. Only Bob's Rock has a flow hydraulic choke effect, as I have personally witnessed a half a dozen times over the flood years. And as we all at the lake have seen, the weir plates removal has made a big difference in the meantime. Their annual removal must be mandated. I do hope the ACRD would approve an initiative to blast Bob's Rock next summer. I have several Lakers who would pay for the work at no cost to the ACRD other than support for the initiative. Thanks, Bob. So that said, there, by that email, I'm assuming that they are saying that there's other science, and my question is around the actual modeling and the science that's in this report. I'd like to know how much of the old report was used, making the assumptions that are in the report. So could staff please address that? Thank you.
If you'd like me to, I don't have the answer for that. I know that the information in the 1956 report was available to Northwest Hydraulics. I think this would be what in the recommendations that came from the Alberni Valley and Banfield Committee. There's the three components. So this is the first recommendation, that staff investigate mitigation options, and I think that if we go ahead with this step, staff would be bringing back some reports. We talked at the AV and Banfield Committee about the need to possibly bring in more outside expertise. If that's some things we want to look at, I would recommend that. This is very complicated science. I mean, I understand some of the basics of it, but this is based on the modeling that Northwest Hydraulics did, and any mitigation options that are looked at have to be looked at very carefully. There is implications both upstream and downstream for anything that was done. Within the report, it identified that removing the wear plates and removing Bob's Rock, according to the engineering consulting firm that we had hired, that would not have an impact on the flooding. And then there was a choke point downstream. But again, before any mitigation options need to be taken, it needs to be looked at very carefully and very thoroughly, because anything you do that affects the upstream or within the lake, has potential to affect downstream, and the report did address that when they talked about the widening of the channel. So that's some information we would bring back as well as the next steps. So that's I think about as much information as I have on this at this time.
So can I make the motion then?
Yes, it's one motion with three parts. So I think
Okay, so I would make the motion that the Alberni Valley and Banfield Service Committee recommend to the Board of Directors that staff investigate mitigation options. And I think that would cover what we just discussed.
Yeah.
That staff provide options for applying the 200-year floodplain maps within the electoral areas of the ACRD, and that staff be directed to investigate grants to assess drought mitigation options for the watershed as well.
Seconded.
Thank
Roberts.
you, Director Roberts. Any further comments? Go ahead, Director McNabb.
So as we discussed at our Alberta Valley Committee meeting, that this report, I mean, it does bring up a lot of questions. I mean, anytime you want to be confused, just ask two experts to give you an opinion. So, I mean, at the time I said that I lived right off the river at that point for 15 years. And I didn't observe what they were saying. I observed what Bob Cole was saying. So, that's a non-scientific approach, but I mean, I was there the whole time and watched what the river was doing, and there seems to be a disparity. So, it's an interesting report, and as Mr. Erg said, anytime you're fiddling with the mouth of a river like that, you've got two problems. One is the lake level, and the other one is downstream. So we've got to be very sure about what we do, but I think there is enough in here to get us a path forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, and are there any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so that brings us to item 10.1B, which is a request for decision regarding a UBCM application. So this is the extra item that was sent out by email not too long ago. So I'm wondering who will speak to it. Mike, is this you? Yeah, please go ahead then.
Yeah, so just really briefly, the province and UBCM recently announced that Treaty First Nations are eligible to apply for the Housing Needs Report funding. And Amy has quickly worked with staff from Uchucklacit, Hooayat, and Ucluelet, and staff recommends going ahead with this. And just want to note that this is, from staff's perspective, we're super excited to be able to work on this and work with our First Nations as well. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Just as a supplemental, I think this is going to be really helpful for our conversations with the federal government on housing negotiations that are being undertaken now. So it's very timely. So it's appreciated, the work that's being done. Director Cote, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to staff, will staff be taking this project on simultaneously with the housing needs report that they're doing for the rural areas? I believe they're starting in Banfield, and just wondering if there's an ability from staff to do this also, or if someone needs to be hired besides. And also know that the city is doing one.
So the Banfield one is just underway. Sort of the rationale or the impetus to looking at this whole project what came from Banfield and Hooayat both. Vancouver Island University is under contract supporting the ACRD in the Banfield work, and staff Amy Aneka has reached out to VIU already, and they certainly would have the capacity to expand this work as well. And I would just note that both Uchucklacit and Hooayat are within the Banfield area, so we'll just expand the scope of the work we're doing. So it wouldn't necessarily be staff doing it, but staff would need to provide, we've expressed the overall willingness to provide the grant management from what we're already doing. And then the area on the West Coast with Tofino and Ucluelet and Long Beach are already working with UBCM to coordinate our funding opportunities, and just this would provide the opportunity for Ucluelet to also participate in that study. And again, I think it would just provide more a bigger area and a better approach to have everybody go ahead with it. It fits in really nicely with the work that we're already doing.
Right.
Thank you. Is there any ability to work with the Sprout Lake to include the Tishat and Hoopachesset reserves for their housing needs? Or is they right out of the scope?
It's specifically for Treaty First Nations at the moment, so I think it's restricted to that right now. That's one of the shortcomings of all of this at the moment. So, sorry, Director Roberts, please go ahead.
Do we know why the Toquat Nation is not included in this, or why they've turned it down? Do we know offhand?
So we've had staff had some discussions with Toquat, and they weren't sort of right now. They weren't looking at. They wanted to participate. There is while there's a funding deadline for applicants. There is some time if Toquat reassesses or was to change their mind, they could potentially be included in this work if they wished, if it was through the ACRD grant application. So,
thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Any further comments? Okay, well, there is a recommendation at the top of the briefing note, but it's not included in your agenda since it was a new ad. Janice, could you share it maybe? That might be helpful if you have it up. If you don't worry.
What was that you wanted, John?
Just the recommendation, the actual motion.
Would you like me to read it out?
That might be the best.
Sure. So the recommendation is that the ACRD Board of Directors directs staff to apply to the UBCM Housing Needs Report program to change the approved Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Housing Needs Report project scope of work and budget to include Uchucklacit Tribe Government, Hooayat First Nation, and Ucluelet First Nation, and confirm willingness to provide overall grant management to the project.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you, Director Coots, seconded by Director Haggard. Did anyone have any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. And it's all right, Janice. You have a lot to do. Okay, so that brings us to item 11. 11.1 are staff reports. So we have Heather, please go ahead with your EOC report.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I just want to provide a brief Emergency Operations Center update on COVID-19. There's going to be a provincial COVID update at 3:15 today, including new modeling data from Dr. Henry. So the stats I'm providing today are from a couple of days ago. So no surprise to anyone on the meeting, provincially, there's been a significant increase in the number of COVID cases over the last few weeks. Tuesday's numbers showed a daily increase of 525 new cases provincially. Of those cases, 41 were in the Vancouver Island Health Authority. So we had 41 as of Tuesday, and with 12 of these cases being located in the Central Island area. And as most of you are likely aware, on Saturday, Dr. Henry imposed regional health orders for the Fraser and Vancouver coastal health regions to break the transmission of COVID. So the health orders include restrictions on social gatherings, group physical activities, and workplaces. Travel in and out of these health authorities are limited to essential travel essential travel only. These regional health orders are in place until noon on November 23rd. Yesterday, Island Health announced that there's a COVID outbreak at the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital in the transitional care unit. My understanding is that the outbreak includes 5 staff who tested positive for COVID. The transitional care unit is closed to admission and to visitors. The emergency room at the hospital remains open. There's also been 2 school exposures at secondary schools in Nanaimo. One is considered a cluster event, which by definition is 2 or more individuals with COVID. And then the other school is considered an exposure event with 1 single case of COVID. There's also been a recent COVID exposure in Tofino. So I'm mentioning those just to highlight the fact that COVID is in this area. So locally, our EOC remains open at level 1. We continue to fund the shower facility from provincial funding, remains open and is open for the vulnerable population. As well, the Bread of Life and the Salvation Army are trying to secure funding to open a warming center, which would be a place for the vulnerable population to visit and have a coffee and a snack and to get out of the elements. If funded, this facility would take place at the Bread of Life building on 3rd Avenue. They've applied for grant funding and they're awaiting a response. We've reached out to EMBC to look at options for supporting funding. Emergency Management BC has indicated that the only financial support that they can provide for a warming center is expenses related to the extra cleaning due to COVID. So if the warming facility does move ahead, we'll coordinate with EMBC to get that financial support. We continue to meet regularly with the West Coast General Hospital, the RCMP, the fire departments to discuss our COVID response and share related information. We've recently increased COVID communication on social media. Our Alberni Valley Emergency Program Facebook page is up and running. If you are on Facebook, please share our posts to increase our number of followers. Our EOC spokesperson, Director Minions, will record a video message to the community shortly, highlighting the need for us all to continue to do our part to prevent the spread of COVID. Director Minions will also be doing another radio interview on the local radio station later this month. And so the provincial update will be available at 3:15 today. So once I've had a chance to review that information, I will provide a written update to the board and to City Council. And if there's any questions on that, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, shall we receive the reports? Oh, Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Just wondering about the unauthorized camping. I'd imagine that as they're taken apart and they move those people out of the unauthorized campsites. I'm just wondering where they're going to go, and if the city has any supports in place that we could possibly assist with from a regional aspect. So, thanks.
Thank you. Heather?
I can't speak for the city, so I won't be able to answer that question.
Okay. Director Minions?
Thank you. And thank you, Director Cote, for your thoughts on that. We are going to be, or we have been working with Canadian Mental Health Association, of course, the Shelter Society, as well as the Shelter Society operates the shelter, which is funded to be the emergency shelter, and they're funded for cold weather beds, and they're funded for COVID beds as well. There is space at the shelter, and I think where the frustration comes in from some is that there's a bit of a mismatch, because there's space at the shelter and yet there's people who are not able to go because they're on the barred list currently. So we don't have any support specifically through the city that we're able to offer, because housing, mental health, and addiction are provincial responsibilities. But that said, we are working closely with CMHA on this, and CMHA feels very optimistic that they will be able to provide housing, or at least an option of housing, to every person who is currently one of the unauthorized campers. So yeah, I think we'll have more updates over the next few days, but thanks for your concern.
Thank you. Now, shall we receive the reports? Director Shannon? Yeah, just moving, and then seconded by Director Beckett. Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Heather. Okay, so that brings us through to question period, because I don't think there are any other items under 11 through 13. Are there any questions via email or in the panel thing?
Hi, Mr. Chair. There were no questions submitted today.
Okay.
On the respecting the agenda.
Okay, so that brings us to item 15, which is a recess to go into the Regional Hospital District meeting. Could we have a motion to do that, please? Thank you, Director McNabb, seconded by Director Coots. All those in favor? Motion carried. All right. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional Hospital District to order, and recognize that we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Distraught and the Hipetchesett First Nations, and ask for an approval of the agenda such as it is.
So moved.
Seconder. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, so we have the minutes of October 14th, 2020. Somebody like to move the minutes? Chakotay?
Second.
Okay, any errors or omissions in that? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Is anybody opposed? Okay, thanks. We have no correspondence for action, no for information, and request for a decision of bylaw. So we have reports. Banfield Health Care Center.
No report, Chair McNabb.
Thank you. Alberni-Clayoquot Continuing Care Society. We had another meeting, this time at the casino, which was actually a good venue if anybody's looking for one. Social distancing was fine. The acoustics in there is quite good. And so it went off quite well. But basically a continuum of frustration of working within the pandemic, and the effects on staff and the residents. And so it's just when new patients come in, they have to be quarantined for 2 weeks under the orders of the British Columbia Health Authority and the Vancouver Island Health Authority, that becomes a problem because, you know, taking people from a home environment in most cases and putting them in quarantine for 2 weeks is problematic, but there's nothing really else that can be done. So they you know, try to step up the care level to those folks so they've got more contact. And it's, you know, going into Christmas season, we usually have a lot of things happening for Park and Echo, and lots of music and Christmas trees and Santa Claus and all kinds of other things, but a lot of that is not going to happen this year. The board funds a gift to each patient, and that will happen this year. So at least they may not see Santa Claus, but Santa Claus will be there. So that's pretty much it. We've got another meeting on December the 2nd. Thank you. Director Cote, the West Coast Native Healthcare Society.
Thank you. Phone's ringing. I'll just try and hang up. There we go. So meeting is next week, and we're actually going to be meeting at the Barclay. So I'll have a report for the next meeting. Thanks.
Thanks. And Tofino General Hospital. Anybody? West Coast directors? Nope.
Nothing to report. I don't know if Director Steer is on or not.
I am. Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
I do have a report.
Great. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. Just thank you very much, Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. Just in conversations with the site director at General Hospital, this summer has been an incredible summer. Some of the highest counts that we've had coming into our emergency room department there. It has been quite overwhelming, the numbers that are there. I'll touch a little bit later on onto some of the concerns around the infrastructure issues that are surrounding Tofino General Hospital. One of the other issues that has come up and that was pointed out is that of our 10 acute inpatient care beds, 6 of those are currently being taken up by long-term care beds. And so it brings up another issue within our communities about the ability to house people in these situations. They are all in waiting for positions in other parts of our region. So it's something that has definitely come onto the radar very acutely lately. There's also some, as I alluded to earlier, some really severe operational challenges regarding the infrastructure at Tofino General Hospital. I'm sure people are probably all aware of those issues, and may have been brought up in the past. So excuse me for maybe reiterating things that you're probably all quite aware of. But through all levels of our facility there, we are faced with some major challenges. You know that the building is quite old, over 70 years of age, and many of the physical infrastructure issues are at risk there. We currently are also looking at issues around the best delivery of care to our region that we service, and that's not only the communities that are within there, but also with the visitor population that, as I'm sure you are aware, in our region is quite extensive. So from those ends of the equation, it is important that we continue to bring the issues of infrastructure and our ability to deliver the level of care that I think is necessary out on the West Coast. Further to the capital upgrades that are there, there is some work being done in the X-ray and imaging area. That work began in October, should hopefully be completed by December. There's also been some electrical upgrades in patient rooms. I'm sure everyone's aware of the trailer for COVID testing that is in the western portion of our parking lot there. But once again, those ideas or those mitigation things that are happening at our hospital are just once again indicative of we do have an aging infrastructure, but we still have to provide those services. And so right now we are, pun intended, we are putting Band-Aids on many of the things that are there. Further to the from the operational end of things, staffing at the hospital, we are fortunate that we have a mental health and substance use worker position that has been filled. I believe it's on a trial or a temporary basis, but we're thankful for that at this point. There's also a posting for an outreach nurse that is not been filled yet, but has still been posted out there. That's in terms of operation and structure. I did want to bring up, though, the Tofino General Hospital Foundation put on a very successful fundraiser between the communities in our area, and we're able to raise upwards of $165,000 at the most recent fundraiser. And some of that money, in discussion with hospital staff, has been used to refresh basically our trauma room, our emergency room there, which, as I'm sure Director Cole is aware of, definitely could use some refreshing in that area. The other things that money was being targeted for were some of the monitors that are useful in that emergency room area. So the purchase of some of those monitors that are coming in. And the last piece of that was there was some money dedicated to some of the physiotherapy room, some of the equipment that had been requested through there. So all in all, an incredible fundraiser for a small communities on the West Coast here to raise that. We continue to support the Tofino General Hospital Foundation in all their endeavors, of which they are also very active in the lobbying efforts to bring let's call it a new level of healthcare delivery to our West Coast region, which may include hopefully a new hospital into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that report. Okay, West Coast General Hospital. I see on the minutes of the last meeting that we were to write the West Coast General Hospital and ask them to contribute to this meeting. I'm not sure if staff can tell us if that happened.
I can speak to that, Mr. Chair. I did send an invite, but I have not heard anything back, so I will follow up again.
So will I. That'll be two of us.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Is there any other reports? I see none of our directors have visual medical conditions this time. No band-aids on heads or anything. So,
excuse me, Chair. You missed.
Yes.
You missed the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network report.
I did. I jumped right over and that. Sorry about that. I was scrolling up and it went too far. Go ahead.
Okay. Just like to say our meeting is next week, and thank you to Director Beckett for his efforts with the recruitment. So we have someone new that's made application from Banfield. So excellent. And just for the West Coast General Hospital, I was going to refer to the request to the West Coast General Hospital to provide us with an annual report at minimum, and also say that we'd like to have at least a biannual report coming from them on what's happening there. Further, we've never asked for Tofino General Hospital to give us an annual report. Thank you to Director Steer for the great report that he just gave. I think it was really informative. But I would really like to further make a connection with the Tofino Hospital, because that will be running through the Alberni Clayoquot Health Regional District. So it'd be great to make that connection so that we can continue to advocate for our community's needs. So thank you.
Thank you for that. So can we get a motion to receive these reports?
Director Steer has some.
Say again.
Director Steer, you're muted.
Thank you. Through the chair, I did have a comment to Director Cote that in discussion with the site director, Michelle Hanna, we had talked about if it would be appropriate to have a written report, or if in fact maybe a delegation on a biannual from herself from sort of the operational infrastructure end of the hospital. And at this point, in that discussion, we thought at this point the direct reporting through myself would be sufficient. But if you felt that a more formalized report, I'm more than happy to broach that subject with Ms. Hannah.
Okay, Director Cote, do you got a comment on that?
I would really like to see a formal report coming from you know, it probably won't be much different than what you've just reported out, but I think that moving forward, it gets legs when it comes to places like the Health Network or to the Island Health Table, where Director McNabb will be going and having discussions where as a director, you're not allowed to participate at that time. So having something in writing from the actual hospital, I think is important moving forward. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, so motion to receive the reports.
Director McNabb, Director Bodner, and other hands. Don't know if you can see them.
Oh, sorry, I can't see her, sorry. Director Bodner?
Thank you. That was what Director Cote said. It would be really nice to get some more information. It would be really nice to be able to get some more information about what's going on with the Tofino General Hospital. You know, it seemed to be like a lot of work has gone into planning of it, and it sounds like any wonderful funding that's coming in seems to be having to fix things that are happening around at the hospital right now. So in any way that we can look at how we are able to advocate for Tofino, it would, if we have some kind of report, it would help to refresh our minds as to, you know, yeah, how can we help to support them on the West Coast? Thank you.
I think they've got a built-in advocate in Victoria. I'm sure that she will be very helpful in that cause. Director Cole?
Thank you. I just wanted to throw out there, when we're talking about all things Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network healthcare, that aside from the Tofino General Hospital, I believe it was last year or 10 months ago when the word came out that there was no new hospital looming in this next decade, that at that point, UCLUET, we got a little bit more serious about our healthcare center, and that is still on the horizon. I believe our UCLUET CEO is in talks with Mr. Holmes on how we can get a little bit more traction with Island Health in the short term in bringing more structure and assets and resources to the West Coast via a healthcare center in UCLUET. So that is something we're actually engaging in heavily right now and hope to have in fruition in the next short period of time.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay, motion to receive the reports. Let's do that this time. Okay, Dr. Roberts, and I can't see. I've only got
Jack.
9. Director Jack, thank you very much. Okay, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, carried. Now we have no unfinished business that I know of. No late business. Question period. Is there anybody on with us?
Mr. Chair, no, there is no one with us today on the Zoom meeting, and no questions or comments were received at the regional district email address.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
This is
Director Roberts and Director Bodner. Okay, thank you very much. And all in favor? Anybody want to stay here? Come on. Alrighty, we're out of here. Thanks.
We have in camera.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so that brings us to reconvening.